Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No. Because I'm going to get him. My client, the Honorable Henry T. Fleming, should go right to fucking jail. The son of a bitch is guilty. That man is guilty. That man is a slime. He is a slime. If he's allowed to go free, then something really wrong is going on. Mr. Locken, you are out of order. You're out of order. You're out of order. The whole trial is out of order. They're out of order. That man, that crazy.
Rocken Larry Locken. Hey, what's going on? What's your opinion? Well, what's my opinion tonight is, again, I'm going to hit a little bit on the Supreme Court. Kenny's still a little bit under the weather, and hopefully he'll be getting back on air soon. But you know, with everything going on, hopefully everybody can hear me better now. My microphone closer. I want to talk a little bit about the Supreme Court again tonight, because I don't think it can be hammered home enough how these are picks that affect generations on end. And see, here's what's going on. South Africa is finally kind of fighting through this problem right now. What these people would like to do, because they know that they're, say, within a generation, 2 generations at most, they know they're going to be the minority in this country, color-wise. But they want to go ahead and burn the place down on their way out and set up all these judicial ideologue laws. You know, they want to overturn Roe V Wade, which is a woman's right to choose. And they definitely will with Supreme Court, and I'll get to that in a minute, with Anthony Kennedy retiring and Trump pushing through a new nominee. That's definitely going to happen. You will probably see gay marriage overturned by the Supreme Court, by this 9-member body. That now becomes even more conservative, because Anthony Kennedy, even though he was a conservative, he was a swing vote on abortion and a couple other things, but usually he was a pretty hard-line Republican as well. But Trump is looking at younger, newer people that are, say, like in their early 30s that can be on the Supreme Court, well, until they're 150, basically, until they can wheel them in there on a respirator. And this is just kind of some of the stuff here that I'd like to read to you a little bit here. This comes from, I believe this comes from KTAR News in Morristown, New Jersey. Moving forward quickly on a key decision, President Donald Trump says he plans to announce his choice to succeed retiring Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy on July 9th. He added that 2 women are among his top candidates for the job. Yeah, okay, I'm sure they're Kellyanne Conway and Sarah Huckabee Sanders clones, just like them all. You know, or the ladies that work over at Fox News with the fake hair and teeth. But the thing is if you remember during the 2016 election, before Barack Obama, a year before Obama's term was up, there was a vacancy on the Supreme Court after Tony Scalia had passed away, Antonin Scalia. And Obama nominated a middle-of-the-road guy. He wasn't really liberal, wasn't really too right-wing, Merrick Garland. And now old turtleneck Mitch McConnell, and the Congress wouldn't even hear it. Wouldn't even hear of it, because it was an election year with a lame duck president, which has never been something that's been done before. Well, now they're saying, since that's not the case, it's the midterm, they're going to ram this through, because they know that if they wait till January, the Democrats could take back the Senate. They'll definitely take back Congress. Senate's going to be kind of tricky, but they still could. So they're going to ram one of these people through. Now, it's funny how Anthony Kennedy all of a sudden up and decided to retire. I know that Trump's appointee, Neil Gorsuch, used to be a law clerk of his. One of the other gentlemen that's applying for this position used to be a law clerk as well of Anthony Kennedy's. And come to find out, reports have recently come out that Deutsche Bank The main guy at Deutsche Bank that dealt with Donald Trump for several years was Anthony Kennedy's son. So, all of this between Gorsuch, this could have pressured Kennedy into retiring, so they can get somebody on the Supreme Court that will really, not go with the Democrats on those swing issues like abortion, okay, like gay rights, like things like human rights over corporation rights, okay, and and in the time that Trump's in the presidency, another Supreme Court justice could pass away, and we'd be looking at a really stacked court for a lot of years. And this is more important than Congress or Senate. These people decide everything. The only thing that can be done in the future is possibly add, because there's nothing in the Constitution that talks about how many Supreme Court justices we need to have. Sometimes we've had 6, sometimes we've had 7, we've had 9, and then back to 7 again. We could have another 2, we could get another 2 in there that would be sensible, but I'm not sure how hard that is to do. I'm not sure if that takes a 2/3 of the Senate, mandate to push through. That's something I really don't know about. And here's another thing that, in its infinite wisdom, the Constitution forgot to address was any kind of an oversight on the Supreme Court. There is none, period. A justice on the Supreme Court can be reprimanded and asked to leave for certain conduct, but it has to be by the other members of the Supreme Court. Okay, so it's just crazy. I mean, it's the same political philosophy, only scarier, of these flyover, blowover states like Montana and Wyoming having as much decision as New York, Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, in these bigger states, having the same amount of representation as far as laws go. You know what I mean? They vote in the Senate. There's 2 people from a state with like 100,000 people in it, and then there's another state with 20 million people in it, and they've got the same amount of senators. So it's really a lot of things were set really fucked up, actually. And some of these judges are so right wing in their thinking that Trump likes it. I'd heard, I believe Bob Kincaid might have been talking about this, that it's not even completely settled that anybody besides a white, besides somebody that's part of the white race, has full constitutional rights. So they're going to start bringing that shit up again. Some of these names that you're going to hear, coming out here real quick. I've got it narrowed down to, there was like 26 names, but knowing Trump and his game, I've got it figured down to probably, he's probably got, there's this guy, like I said, by the name of Brett Kavanaugh. He worked for Gorsuch, and he was also a former Kennedy law clerk. Okay, and like Gorsuch was as well. So he's one choice that could go in there, and he's a real hardliner and anti-abortion. He's he's young. He's young. All these guys, all of these people are under 55. Kavanaugh is the oldest at 53. So this is going to screw our country for so many decades, because eventually, yes, we will evolve, and we will, white, ignorant, redneck people will be less and less the minority. Okay, but what we're going to be stuck with is all these laws that the Supreme Court created, and with all these Supreme Court officials that are still stuck on there another 20 or 30 years without shit we can do about it. Okay, they're trying to put all those laws in place, so once they're the very minority, they have the control over everything. Like South Africa really did too. The 8 to 10% of white people that ran that country, that fucking mass murdered and genocide killed black people like it was a hobby. they are now kind of facing their own, you know, they're kind of facing their karma over there, being asked to leave the country, give up their farmland, you know, and you can't blame them. You can't blame them. Finally, you can't blame them for being that pissed off. And you know, I mean, and I don't, you know, I want everybody to live in harmony and together. South Africa is another story. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, those 6 to 8% of the white people, they, you know, they leave the country or do your own thing, whatever. But you know, stay out of government there. You've ruled the whole government while the rest of the population was dark skinned. And that's what they're trying to set up here. They're trying to prolong it for as long as possible so that these laws are fucking in place and that we got to go back and get rid of women. I mean, I love women and I take a bullet for a woman marching for abortion in a second, but 53% of women voted for Donald Trump. Now, granted, most of these were white women that were, you know, from the South and didn't give a damn that Trump would grab, you know, that if they turned their back, Trump might grab their teenage daughter, you know, in an inappropriate spot. They don't care. They don't care. Their thing is we're electing a leader, not a pastor. Boy, I bet you they never said that about Obama. I bet you they were like, Obama's the divider. And of course, the jealousy of Hillary because she's a woman. Hillary's a woman, and those goddamn emails and WikiLeaks and Benghazi. Yeah, that's another thing. Did anybody catch the other day fucking Trey Gowdy from South Carolina, Republican, up there asking Rosenstein and Christopher Wray of the FBI, who did a great job, by the way, shutting back those stupid ass Republican congressmen. Asking Rosenstein, when's this going to wrap up? You know, Trey Gowdy, Mr. Trey Gowdy, the guy that investigated Hillary Clinton for 2.5 years, a couple of 12-hour hearings, interviewing her on the Hill. Nothing come of it at all. And here he is complaining when this investigation has only been going on about 400 days. Watergate took, oh shit, you know, Watergate took close to 1,200 days. Whitewater, close to 3,000 days. Iran-Contra, same thing, over 2,500 days. These things fucking take time. And yes, we have better technology now, but the difference is all those other things, Iran-Contra, Watergate, I just mentioned, each one of them, all of those things together might have 75 to 80% the shit to fucking sort through that's going on with this mess and this debacle and this interference in our election, and you know, who did what, who knew what, who blew who, the payoffs and the ripoffs and the things that nobody saw, and WikiLeaks, which is something nobody really did see, because see, WikiLeaks reported absolutely nothing. The only thing that it did show is that Hillary Clinton was probably a boring person as a human. That's probably it. Because I read through most of the documents, but none of these redneck hick hillbillies read anything like that. I could come out and tell you some shit like, oh my God, all these documents are coming out about fucking so-and-so. All these documents are coming out. And you'd buy it and you'd be waiting. And dude, 10% wouldn't even read it. They wouldn't even read it because 10% of them couldn't even, 90% of them probably couldn't even, well, let me put it to you this way. 90% of them could not tell you who the leader of Canada was. 10% of them could not tell you where Canada was or where Washington, D.C. was on a map. That's scary. There are people, I mean, I know people, you want to laugh at Jimmy Kimmel and shit, but he does these little things sometimes out on the, I don't really watch him, but I'll catch these things where he's asking people questions out on the road for real. And some of these motherfuckers will think that North Korea is above us. They have no clue in the area of the world that it's at. When you show them a map, you show them a map of the world with none of the names and they don't know. Or, I mean, some of these people pick North Korea where Canada was. You know, a couple of people are like, oh, isn't it over in Asia somewhere? Yeah. I mean, people, you got to be aware, Americans especially. We don't just live, we're starting to pay the repercussions of living in our own little bubble over here. Okay, while the rest of the world is looking at us like, what the fuck? You're aligning with China and a fucking KGB agent slime bag like Putin. And yeah, I'll go off on the Russians because I've been studying them for 35 years. Okay, I know it's not a judgment thing. I know their games. Okay, I know the way they do shit. You know, the way they used to do shit on shortwave radio, the disinformation. They're very good at they're very good with taking voice, like with the old shortwave radio. The Russians used to train people to have American sounding voices, but you listen for a while and it starts sounding weird because you're not hearing any American slang that even the fucking oldest, most out of touch person would use. So, I mean, the Russians have been, you know, money wise involved in our business for a long time. And that's just, you know, that's just how this shit went down. And here's what's the thing with the Supreme Court, okay? Trump wants to get another appointee in there. So, because eventually this is going to go in front of the Supreme Court, whether a sitting president can be prosecuted, okay? Because Mueller's going to come out with some shit, and then the House will have enough people to impeach. But then, like I reminded people last time, that doesn't mean impeachment. Hey, that's just the House. Then it has to go over to the Senate, where you need 67 out of 100 votes to remove. You need 2/3 of the Senate. You'd never get that in a fairy tale for anything. You would need that to remove Trump from office. Now, this thing is also because Miller's going to try to look for ways in the Constitution that he can indict a sitting president, especially if there's espionage involved or treason, and that's going to end up going in front of the Supreme Court. And you know, I still think with even Kennedy remaining in there, though, it still would have been 5-4 in Trump's favor. Look, they overturned the travel ban after all the lower courts had been against Trump. It's going to be 5-4 straight down party lines. And Trump, you know, we'll see how it goes, but that don't matter. That bastard, you know, let's look forward 8 years from now, okay? We get through all this shit, okay? What I'm trying to say is these Supreme Court cocksuckers will still be in there. So at that point, we're going to have to advocate for like adding 2 more. Okay. It'd also be nice if we made Puerto Rico a state and maybe DC a state instead of a district, but Puerto Rico, of course, if they were white, you know, if it wasn't a majority Hispanic, kind of African skin colored, if it looked like Sweden or Norway or Denmark or Germany or where, you know, somewhere that, you know, white middle of the road, fucking Midwest America, they would already be a state. They would already be a state. They would have already been a state. Same thing with Cuba. If Cuba would have been like a white nation way back when the revolution happened in the 50s, I think shit would have worked out differently, and they probably would have become a state of ours too. It's given us 52 states, but that's all conjecture and just my opinion. But what gets me is that 2 of these Supreme Court nominees are women. One of them just so happened to work with Trump's sister, who is on a federal appeals court. Let me make sure I get that right. Yeah, on a federal appeals court in Chicago, I do believe. But I want to make sure I don't want any of the, not that any Republicans would question that or anything, and not that it's any big fucking deal. Bottom line is basically one of these motherfuckers that's on the top of Trump's list, okay, works on the federal, works on a version of there it is, Thomas Hardman, who's being eyed heavily. He serves alongside Trump's sister on the Philadelphia-based 3rd U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. So, you know, I mean, there you go. But I'm telling you, ladies, look, and I know this has been threatened before and all this shit and like this, but Roe v. Wade will be overturned. more than likely, well, I don't know if they'll be able to get to that by then, but there will be a big push for, if Democrats don't take back the House this year and maybe the Senate, you will see gay marriage also abolished by the Supreme Court. And that will mean, and it'll set precedents for presidents in the future that want to do good executive orders to have a hard time doing it, because this Republican-leaning, right-wing, racist, that fucking fascist Nazi, 5 of the 9 members of the Supreme Court, they're not going to let that happen. They're the last vestige for the great white hope. Okay, and so what I'm saying is like, a lot of this shit, these issues, social issues we have with each other, could be solved in a generation, a couple decades. And then we got to also understand we're going to have another generation of fucking, once we really get real with each other, we're going to have another generation, or generation F, maybe 2, of fixing the messes on so many levels. And I'm not just saying, all the messes Trump made, except the Supreme Court one is a pretty big mess. It's probably the biggest mess any president has ever made in the history of the fucking country, including Nixon, I would say. So, we're going to be left cleaning up the mess and deciding how do we want to change the way we run our government in this country? Do we want to get in there and fucking decide that, look, there's some shit that needs to be talked about and changed? I mean, I don't really think there'd be a reason, like I said the other night in my rant, I didn't say this then, but there really wouldn't be, if people were like I had a list of 5 or 6 issues, and you'll have to go back and listen to the show, but if those 5 or 6 issues were taken care of, there really wouldn't be anything to, well, I'm this party or that party I'm on, I mean, get your ass out of, get your fucking nose out of somebody's business about abortion. Free college to everyone, free universal health care and prescriptions to everyone in the U.S. Okay, free siphon while going to college, gay marriage legal, all of that stuff. There we go. Like I said, the guns, there's as many guns as people in America. Would I personally go take them and round them up from people? No, that'd be kind of foolish, but I might consider quit making them, or limit the manufacturing of them. But like I said, that's the issue that'll have to come through consciousness and people not being so paranoid and thinking they need to arm to the tilt and go blow up a fucking school and blow up people. And it's always paranoid white people with a Confederate flag, okay? I don't want to hear anything about black on black crime, okay? Not as far as I'm concerned, 99% of the time if that shit happens, that's over a beef, person between a person. It ain't a fucking thought out mass planned genocide. Okay, I've yet to see that by an African American. I think the closest thing I ever saw was, and it was on a movie, it was in New Jack City when they rolled by and shot down the mafia. I think that's probably the biggest mass murder by African Americans I've ever seen. And it wasn't even in real life. So, people get real. And I don't, this white anxiety, I don't get it. Why wouldn't people want? I understand like where Martin Luther King was coming from, and Malcolm X and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, about like not getting too involved with the white community and things like that from their perspective, because they were right, and what they were trying to do is warn people to be peaceful, but be very cautious, okay? But from the white person's perspective of fearing that shit, we've already been the majority. Why would we not want to look like a cooler country, a more mixed country, why would we not want to be the great American melting pot, the big lie that we never were, that we were supposed to be in somebody's mind? Why wouldn't they want that? Religion has a lot to do with it, man. Christianity, I'm telling you, white fundamentalist Christianity, after fucking slavery and what was done to the Native Americans, I'm telling you, that's the 3rd worst thing to ever happen to our shores. It's been a cult. It's been a God, it's been a plague on our society. It's held us back. These people are, I mean, you know, a lot of these people, Mike Huckabee, people like that, Pat Robertson, 158,000-year-old Pat Robertson, they really would like you to learn about the Bible and biology and in chemistry class and, you know, God knows fucking what, you know, 2 Corinthians and, you know, in math class, who the hell knows? But they really are like that, okay? And we're going to have a hard enough time fighting this shit on. So get out there, hold your nose, get out there and vote. Get out there and vote this midterm. Start a blue wave. I know you don't like you know, corporate Democrats. Right now, though, we can fight that out later. Right now, moderate Democrats, non-corporate PAC taking Democrats, liberal, good progressive Democrats like I believe in, who don't take PAC money, and even a couple of these corporate assholes need to get on the same page for a few more months till we get the fucking House back. Then we can start phasing these motherfuckers like Pelosi out and, you know, and Chuck Schumer and who knows and all that. And the craziest fucking thing about it is if we took back the House, Nancy Pelosi is going to be the Speaker of the House. And like, say something happened to Trump, he passed away or he was impeached, right? You'd have a situation you've never had. And I think it happened once in the 1700s or something but this shit was different then. But you'd have the House majority leader becoming the vice president under a Republican president. That would be kind of crazy. I didn't realize that. I always knew House majority was third in line in case something happened to the two at once, the vice president and the president. But I didn't realize that under a situation where it was impeached and the other party controlled the House, that person would become the vice president under their enemy. But, you know, I mean, I can't think of a better date for Pence to take to the prom than Pelosi. Maybe that'll who knows? Maybe that'll give him a pulse, and maybe that'll, I don't know. I don't know what the hell it'll do for her, but, you know, it's time for her to hang it up and let somebody else be the House majority leader. And with that, you know, I'm going to quit rambling, and I just wanted to say thank you very much to Kenny and, you know, our shows, the What's Your Opinion show, Opinion That Facts, my 2 channels, Palladium Express Productions and Palladium Light Grid Project. I don't talk a lot about the same things. I'll post these videos to those channels, but I won't talk a lot about the same things I do on these channels because I don't want to, you know, I'm not going to try to dummy down what we're doing with, you know, talk of experiences that I've had with extraterrestrials and stuff, because most of the new age shit out there you do see is phony if you know anything about it. Coast to Coast Late Night is an AM radio show. That's a big scam and a big lie, and nothing but bullshit artists on there. People like From Ancient Aliens, David Wilcock and Corey Good, Russian Shills. They're not, you know, Alex Jones, people like that have claimed they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. But I've been interviewed about my experiences, and they're around, but that's all I'm going to say. I won't, like I told Kenny, I'm not going to talk about that shit really on this show unless it ever comes up or if it's necessary. I'll just tell you this much. If extraterrestrials aren't completely like are in the sky around us, right, then the only other option, people, is that the military is not just 50 years, but the military is about 500 to 1,000 years ahead of us in technology with free energy and shit. That's where I'm at the liberty of knowing it's either one of those two things. And I think it's a little bit of both. But know that for a fact. Know the scarier thing than some alien coming to get you is that your government is that far ahead of you and has free energy and has, you know, something the size of one refrigerator could be placed in a circle and energized like a mile of houses around it for free 24/7. Okay, that's the kind of technology they've got that they've been lied to about. But that'll all come out in time, and anybody who, doesn't agree with that, that's their opinion, and and whatever. And I'm not going to provide them any facts. They can go look it up and do it, and fuck them if they don't agree. And if they agree, yeah, cool. If not, cool, whatever. If they agree, fuck them. If they don't, fuck them. I love them either way, whatever. Everybody's got their own past. But with that being said, I'll quit rambling, and I'm going to go ahead and leave this off with giving everybody a big cosmic dating game kiss like I do in my other shows. And that's a wrap.